This is the second of a three-part series delivered by the Harvard Division of Continuing Education and the Committee on the Concerns of Women at Harvard, or CCW. A lot of people worked to create this series, and I just want to take another minute to thank everyone again for all the time spent developing it. Today's the second session with Amanda Peters, and it will discuss how to build and sustain your professional network at Harvard and beyond. Amanda advises degree candidates and alumni of the Harvard University Extension School and delivers related career programming. She has worked for multiple universities and degree programs and has a wide range of clients and now specializes in coaching experienced professionals who are lifelong learners. Directly prior to her role with the Mignone Center for Career Success and Harvard Extension School, Amanda worked at MIT managing comprehensive career services for two multidisciplinary master's programs. Her experience in career counseling, employer engagement, and event delivery has also included work at Harvard Kennedy School, at MIT's main career services office, and at Boston University School of Management and JVS Boston. Amanda holds a Master of Education in Counseling from Boston University and a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from Brown. She is a certified Master of Career Services through the National Career Development Association. And so before I hand it over to Amanda, I'm just going to go over some of our engagement guidelines. So I'm going to share these in the chat. I'm not going to read through this whole slide, but please feel free to read through them. We just really want to briefly highlight that we want you to be professional, courteous, and respect your peers while speaking only your truth. Please also remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking and have your video on if you're comfortable with that. During the session, we're going to ask that you engage using the chat primarily. Just share your questions or any thoughts you have. We will have a Q&A or try to hold some time at the end of the session for a Q&A. And so with that, I'm actually going to pass it over to Amanda. Thank you again for sharing this, and I'm excited for the session.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who is attending. I'm just going to share my screen. Great. Welcome, everyone. So happy to see you all here and to have us joined by everyone from across Harvard who is participating in this CCW program today. I am going to focus on how you can engage with and build a professional network across Harvard. We're going to be using the chat a lot, as Ashley mentioned, with really the goal of crowdsourcing ideas as much as possible about ways that you can network at Harvard and also to connect with each other. And to get us started, I wanted to have people put in the chat, if you feel comfortable, of course, your name, your role, if you would like to, your department, or perhaps your Harvard school. And if you use LinkedIn, maybe your LinkedIn profile URL, if you have one, or a staff page, perhaps, or a link to your department page. Take just a few seconds for this. And as people start sharing, read what others are sharing. One of my goals is really to get you to connect to each other. And so it's an opportunity to have this moment to connect, to reach out. Why not reach out to Jackie? I recognize some familiar faces from the Division of Continuing Ed. Why not reach out to other people who share their information as we go along here, and just take maybe 2 or 3 people who you might make an effort to connect with by the end of this. You can let them know that you are part of this network. Or maybe you see someone in the list of participants that you know and you wish you had connected to. It's been ages, you wish you had reconnected to them. What a great opportunity to send them a private chat mentioning that you're here today. It's a great time to build that network while you're in an event. And I wanted to also make sure that you can feel free to connect to me as well. My LinkedIn profile is default follow. So as you'll see on the screen in the screenshot, I've selected, if you click on the drop-down menu where it says more, you're able to connect to me there if it doesn't pop up on my profile. I'd really love to be connected to you. I, as anyone who knows me knows, am always excited to talk about networking and to connect to new people because it's made such a big difference to my life and also to the lives of those who I work with every day. As just one example, I first learned about the role that I ended up with at the Kennedy School from a former MIT colleague who then went to work there. But I'd already met the hiring manager years before in two different situations. One, I introduced from by some people from Cambridge. I'm a native Cantabrigian, and another time because I did an informational interview with her when I was thinking about becoming a career counselor. So networking has made a huge difference in my life. Now I work with the enrolled Harvard Extension School students of all programs. Through the Career and Academic Resource Center, and also degree candidates and alumni through the Mignone Center for Career Success. So I get to hear daily about people's experience with networking and what a difference it's made in their lives, including staff members at Harvard. Really happy to have so many people introducing themselves now, and certainly look in there and decide, are there people who you might reach out to? I would challenge you to pick two or three to reach out to separately. Today, we have around 45 minutes together, and we are going to talk about why networking matters to your career, some best practices for any networking situation, tips for finding and connecting to people, including at Harvard, and techniques for overcoming nerves that come up around networking, as I've heard that these are some of the key things that people wanted to have covered, and also some ways to to follow up rather, and stay in touch with your network. Oh, it's great to see people from across different Harvard schools here as well. Today, we're going to be focusing on networking as it is in terms of building relationships for the long term, not asking for a job, not using someone, but as an experience where both parties can benefit across time. So why does networking matter to your particular career? First of all, it can help build career resilience so that you're able to bounce back when things happen in your career. Research shows it can aid in career progression, including when it comes to salary progression. It can help build that trust and mutual respect and a reputation in your field. And especially when you have a diverse network with a variety of different perspectives, it can increase innovation and creativity, including on teams. It can even improve career satisfaction. And of course, one of the obvious ones, help you explore and access new opportunities. Through it, you can gain useful insights and information to help you do your job better every day and enhance your employability. And also, and I thought this was interesting, connected to our last talk, it can help develop emotional intelligence further. But it can also give people a sense of connection to you, even if they are not directly connected to you. That feeling of affiliation to a network, whether it's your workplace, your school, or because you know someone in common, people often feel more connected to you just because of that, even if they're not your direct connection. And then finally, when we're taking a strategic approach, networking can really put you in a place to be able to take advantage of the unexpected. So as you get started on your more strategic networking, look for those places where opportunity comes up and where you can take advantage of making a new connection, or maybe it'll help open a new door for you. And so really consider right now, while we're focusing on a strategic approach, when has networking benefited you in your life? As was mentioned at the very beginning, we're going to be taking questions in the chat as we go, and I'll address them as much as I can at the end. But I would also urge you to have a piece of paper out. Have some place, if it's not paper, if it's online, some place where you can take notes as we go. Ideas are going to come to you for things that might be helpful or groups that might be helpful for you to find people for your network. Ideas will come up about particular individuals who you want to reconnect to. And so right now is the perfect time to get that place out to make those notes and start jotting down ideas as they come up. I'm going to launch a poll first of all to find out why networking matters to you, and more in particular, what motivated you to sign up for today's session. What is it that motivates you around networking? Is it to meet people across Harvard? Is that what really drew you to this topic? Is it to learn more about your field? Is that why you want to expand your network? Or maybe explore potential career paths? And networking is a really easy way to dip your toe in without making a big commitment. As I mentioned, I found that out when I networked with my former boss at the Kennedy School way back over 20 years ago now. Figure out what it takes. Maybe you want to figure out what it takes to move up here at Harvard, or you have something else that is really important to you. And you may or may not want to put that in the chat, depending on how open you are about what your motivation is for that today. So I'm going to end the poll now. Oh, and someone mentioned they like to connect with other managers so that when positions open up, they can share potential candidates with one another. Fantastic. That's an excellent idea. So we have 37% of people said they wanted to meet people across Harvard. Hopefully, you're already getting the chance to do that in the chat, but also through your ongoing networking. 5% want to learn more about their own field. 40% are looking at investigating potential career paths, and 12% want to figure out what it takes to move up. So keep these goals in mind that you shared as we go through the session to guide your brainstorming of potential contacts and also for your outreach as we go ahead. I wanted to make sure to cover and lay the groundwork with some best practices that are important no matter who you're networking with or why. Being proactive is vital. I'm glad you're starting by being here today, but starting now is important. Reach out to that person whose work you're interested in learning more about or who you met last year. Make a note of them now and maybe set some time on your calendar coming up to do it because building and networking is an ongoing process. It's not some one-time thing that you do just when you need to do it. Oh, sorry. Um, be authentic in your outreach. You're going to be authentic to yourself and your communications, how you sound, but also your approach. Different people are going to have different approaches. But while you do so, make sure that you do tailor your communications to your audience. Make sure that it really speaks to the person that you're writing to or communicating to in other ways. Go in with an open mind, curious and open to learning, and ask questions. That's the easiest way to network. For anyone who's having trouble, make sure that you just go in and ask questions and spend more of your time listening than talking. And then prepare, strategize, research contacts in advance, and follow up on your interactions. And so this is a time for you to have that piece of paper out or that place that you're going to take some notes. And because we're going to start with assessing your current network. If you need extra time to do that, you can block time on your calendar for this as part of your networking plan. I'm sure you'll need more time for this, I should say. Maybe set up a recurring time once a week on your calendar to just focus on some quick wins and networking. But you can also begin right now while those communities and contacts come to mind. So you might consider, for some people, they prefer to brainstorm a list of who's in their current network, or others like to use mind mapping to generate fresh ideas. And although this AI generated mind map is imperfect, definitely, I tried iterating on it a bunch. It's still imperfect there. I hope it can give you an idea of how that might be helpful. Whether you're in the center, your different communities of engagement are out, using different colors can be helpful and help open up your mind more on this. Your current network might include fellow alumni from past schools, classmates now, maybe if you're taking classes at the extension school or elsewhere, colleagues, past colleagues, people across departments at Harvard, including people on this call, peers at other institutions, maybe family, friends, or people involved in your outside communities or activities. My colleague's husband got her job through a connection from his soccer team, for example. And neighbors are often really a great source of information and connections. So map out your network. You won't be able to do it all right now, but once you do, consider who's missing from that network. This can really depend on what you want to learn. If you're interested in exploring, for example, as many of you are, different career paths, who, what are those career paths? Where might you find those people? What are you curious about professionally? And if you can identify those knowledge gaps that you have that need to be filled, who might know those things? It's probably people who are already in that field, for example. Or maybe it's an expert in a particular area, or a person in another department who holds the answers that you've been dying to know to do your own work well. So jot down those names and ideas as they come to you, and we'll be going over more opportunities to do that. And according to a massive study of LinkedIn data, which is often called weak ties, the acquaintances, the family or the friends, or rather, I should say, your acquaintances, not your direct network, or the friends of your friends, for example, those weak ties. It's often through them that we gain the strongest access to new job networks that stretch across unexpected areas. And that lets us help find people and find opportunities that we wouldn't find otherwise. And that's really something to consider, that it's those weak ties that might be the most important as you look to work with your existing networks and identify gaps. Thanks, Brianna. I'm glad you liked that slide. It's fun to do things in the sandbox. So where can you find people to connect to fill those gaps? When planning for today, I really heard from a few people that it can be hard to find internal resources, especially with staff networking where things often differ across Harvard schools, having worked really now for three of them, I would say. I definitely can attest to that, but also at different levels of affiliation to the school, across departments, things are done so differently. So generally, of course, asking people who are already in your network is the best first step to find contacts. So if you're mapping your network, who do you know that's more likely to know the right person to talk to or the right resource or department that you're trying to get connected to? Tell people who you trust what you're learning, looking to learn, or who you want to connect with, and be specific. The more you can be specific, the easier it is for them to help you. Generative AI tools can be really helpful and for ideas of potential contacts, places to find people, and even names nowadays, but the best practice is to really think first and use AI later. But some internal resources that I potentially like to use is, of course, employee resource groups like CCW. Right now, you're on here, you're having the opportunity to network with other people who are across in this call. Um, it's great for connections, it's great for opportunities, it's even great for an opportunity to speak. LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn to find Harvard employees, including under specific school or department headings where they might be tagged on there instead of, say, Harvard University as a whole. I often use it to find talent acquisition consultants from Harvard. I find it the fastest way to do it. I like Harvard Catalyst profiles for those who are interested in doing research connected to human health, for example, or looking at pages of centers, initiatives, programs, depending on what school, they call it something different, on particular Harvard school websites. I'm also really partial to the organization chart on PeopleSoft. I don't know how many people like that now that it's been added. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover everyone, including our team at the Mignone Center for Career Success. But I found it so useful for other departments to find out who reports to who and who I might ask the right question of. And then, of course, you can join formal mentorship programs like the FAS Staff Mentoring Program, or take classes and workshops through the Center for Workplace Development and talk to people who attend it and connect to them afterwards. But you can also just take some really easy wins. Attending an office gathering, for example. I hear that the Art Museum has monthly all staff gatherings. They're breakfasts where everyone can get together and have breakfast together and talk. What a fantastic, informal, easy win for you there to meet people. Alumni Affairs, I learned, has done virtual speed networking, which is an amazing idea. I really enjoy meeting new DCE people, for new to me, through their Donuts Slack channel, where you can sign up for the Slack channel, and then the channel will introduce you to someone new each month to reach out to for a virtual or in-person meetup. So if you know of areas in your particular organization where they do this kind of engagement, if you can put in the chat to help others, or if there's other ways that you find to connect across Harvard, please help other people by sharing that. Externally, you can find people besides a Google search, organization websites, LinkedIn. You can find people through library databases. We are so lucky to have access to Hollis, where you can find things like Leadership Connect in their databases search, for example, and find people across federal government and related organizations, including state and local government now. Oh, it's great to know about that speed networking, Hester. I love that idea. That was so fantastic in the chat. You can also find people outside in professional association events, or member directories are often forgotten for professional associations. Your alma mater's alumni database through conferences. And I like to also reach out to people for conferences I didn't attend, looking at their particular agenda, who's speaking, right to the person. Mention I'm not able to attend, but I'm really interested in connecting because of our mutual interest in something in particular. And I also reach out to people who I read about elsewhere, and I'm interested in their work, and just mention that I read their fantastic article. So if you found particular things helpful, definitely add it in the chat throughout, whether it's internal or external. I love the idea of Mariah for that Crimson Toastmasters. And also someone said the Harvard Art Museums at night is a great place to meet people. So you've identified some people. How are you going to connect? I mentioned earlier, set some time aside to do this. Block time in your calendar if you can. Maybe write it in your date book. I know I work with both a written date book for home stuff and my online calendar for work. Networking can really take time, even if it saves time in the long run to help you get and learn that information that you need to enable you to explore. If you're not someone who will read about a guest speaker and then reach out, considering making a list for yourself and then reaching out on a set day, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So really, when you're reaching out, keep that outreach clear, tailored, and to the point. Make it clear. I asked someone who's a manager who gets a lot of outreach what frustrates them when people reach out to them and what sometimes makes them not reply, because most people, especially across Harvard, I've heard from others, will reply when you reach out. And she said, if they don't let me know why they're reaching out and why now, why are they particularly interested in connecting? And I'm not clear what the purpose of this is, it makes it a little bit trickier to accept. So, are you asking for a short meeting or a phone call as you're exploring a new area, or you're interested in learning from their experience, for example? I like to use words like exploring, learning in these initial emails. Plan what you're going to say about yourself based on your point of connection. Maybe we're both members of Crimson Toastmasters, or we're both Huskies alumni from Northeastern, for example, as two people in the chat are. Who are you as relevant to your audience? Warm invites, those introductions from your contacts so that you can get to those weak ties can be really helpful. But internally, you're already at Harvard, and that's often enough of a connection if they know where you fit in here, if you're looking to speak to someone internally. When it comes to industry experts, you could follow them for a while on LinkedIn. You'll see from my LinkedIn numbers, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You could read their writing and then maybe comment on something that they wrote before you reach out with a question, maybe about an article or about their particular field or topic. So think right now, who would you reach out to if you could? If you could reach out to anyone, who might you connect to? You never know, both internally, right? More narrowly and externally, who's going to say yes when you give it a try. The worst they can do is not reply, not or say no, and you can always ask for alternatives or other people that they recommend you talk to. You're not losing anything. If you're really stressed about what you're going to write, ask AI for help, then edit and alter because again, you want to be authentic and have things in your own language, but it can help. And if someone doesn't answer one way, maybe you reach out through LinkedIn, you can then instead reach out by email or vice versa. Often these days, it's so easy to find email addresses, whether it's through the Harvard directory, whether it's through Rocket Reach. I don't know if anyone's used that. I think you get 5 lookups a month for free. That's what I often will use through those library databases or elsewhere. So if you have a favorite source for finding people's contacts, always welcome. Yes, the someone mentioned the Harvard Art Museum breakfast. That's just for those staff. And so think about what in your particular area can help you connect across your departments. Maybe you want to create something like that for your team. So I really understand that reaching out is easier to talk about than it is to do. And so, how are you going to overcome those networking nerves? First of all, know that you're not alone. I'm assuming that many, many people on this call often also feel uncomfortable reaching out sometimes. I know I do sometimes as well. Especially when it's more exploratory, people tend to be a little uncertain. But many people really enjoy talking about themselves. So going in and knowing that, first off, can be really helpful. Sometimes just taking a slow breath before you respond or before you reach out can make it feel easier as just one simple somatic experience. But really, practice makes the difference. I'm sure that's clear. Right now, a lot of you are actually already networking in the chat. You might already be sending emails via LinkedIn or elsewhere, maybe on Teams, in order to connect to people. The more you practice it, the easier it is. It's a learned skill. So start by practicing in situations and with people with whom you're already comfortable. Maybe a close friend, but you never really ask them how they got into their particular field, or if they know someone in another department in their company, for example, or a distant family member. Often we don't ask them these kinds of questions either. If you practice with those people initially, it can be much easier to talk with other people later on. And I hear from so many of our experienced extension school learners that they make their connections in the classroom with other learners because they already feel comfortable with them or with people from their former companies. So starting with those people who you already know can make then that next outreach to the next person a lot more comfortable. You can also take micro steps. And here I might ask you to make sure that you have that information to write down some ideas for yourself on this as well. What networking activity can you do in 5 minutes? Write down just a few thoughts on that you could do to get to that goal that you initially launched in the poll. Perhaps it's telling 2 people in your life about the types of people you're interested perhaps in speaking to and why you're interested in learning about this. You could ask them for suggestions for other people to talk to. Sometimes that feeling of having that warm introduction is enough to make you feel more comfortable. Maybe you take that 5 minutes to comment on a LinkedIn post of someone or send a Teams message to someone who you haven't seen in a while. Um, be as specific as you can when you make this list of things that you could do in 5 minutes and no idea is wrong. Just jot them all down. And then another thing that can help overcome those networking nerves is really approaching it with curiosity. Listen and ask questions. As I said, people like to talk about themselves. Focus on what you're going to ask more than on what you're going to say can make some people a lot more comfortable. Also, looking for ways that you can help others can be your networking strategy and make you feel more comfortable at the same time. Um, maybe there's an introduction that you can make on their behalf. Maybe you want to help them by sharing a particular article or something that you know they'd be interested in. I'm planning after this to have go out to you a handout with a lot of resources. And one of those is from idealist.org on networking and how you can focus on being generous. And I'm just going to put that in the chat because I happen to have it right here. But this will be a longer list of resources for you. One thing that I love, and this came from a former student at MIT, for people who are anxious, is to set crazy days. That's what she would call these blocks of time that she would set up on Fridays, 1 hour, where she would commit herself to reaching out to 5 to 10 people. She had to only do it within that hour. When she had done it, she was done for the week. And it made her feel a sense of accomplishment and meant that she was getting out some of those networking emails. Of course, you do need to then follow up with them with when some people get back to you, but maybe, 2 to 5 people get back to you, 1 to 2 if it's just out of 5. Often then you can move on, but you've already broken through that wall and you've reached out. And then I personally love connecting to people, but I'm not always that comfortable in big groups. We all have our own ways that we prefer to do things. So if I'm going to a big event, one way I overcome that fear is to just go up to one person who's standing by themselves and perhaps talk to them and introduce myself to them and maybe ask a question about what brings them to this event. Something very simple just to get the conversation going. Talking in small groups, one on one, is really much more comfortable to me, so that works for me. But for you, it might be different. So look at those ways that you can make those small moves. If there's other tactics that you use to get over nerves when it comes to networking, as someone mentioned, Toastmasters, that can be a fantastic thing to share in the chat with others right now. So, say you've set up that meeting. You have reached out. We've discussed situations where a check-in can, yeah, someone mentioned listening to learn is so helpful. Absolutely. Listening to learn really can make such a difference. But we've already discussed situations where check-in can be informal, and that's including like a school celebration, perhaps, one-on-one like this, maybe just by commenting in the chat. She said the Wonder Woman is another way, right? But I also find that there's more formal areas where you can network very strategically. And of course, you've probably all heard of informational interviews, but those being a really core one. Also, when attending events, you can be strategic about it by getting there on the early side. That can be helpful. That's often when introductions happen or the more informal mingling. I used to go to one event, the Boston Area Sustainability Group, when it was still in person, and I would just go at the beginning and take notes on all the introductions when we did a round robin around the room, and then I would leave and connect with everyone separately after that because that's how I was more comfortable. So think about ways that you can be in those more formal settings as well. When it comes to that more strategic, structured networking, I recommend making one-on-one informational meetings a habit. This would be a scheduled meeting to speak one-on-one with someone about their career, their industry, their role, their company. And you can do them at any time. You don't need to be looking for a job. In fact, so many of you are in that exploration phase or thinking about looking into moving up, for example. That's the fantastic time to learn and build relationships. Plan some of your questions in advance based on your research into this particular person and what you're interested in learning. Make sure your questions aren't just going to be things that you can find online. I really, really recommend making sure that at least one question falls into each of these three categories that I have on the slide. That you ask at least one informational question, right? Something about what they do every day, how they got there, how their team is structured, right? Those kinds of informational questions can be really helpful and get you started. What do they like about their job? What don't they like so much? How much do they have the opportunity to work in teams if that's important to you, for example? I would ask at least one advice question. Something like, if you were me, right? What would you do right now as your next step if I'm looking to move into this space from where I am at this time, right? And one at least question for referrals. Who else might you speak to? Maybe one of your informational questions was, what other organizations do you think are doing great work in this space? And they might list a few places, and you might ask, is there anyone there that you happen to know that you would recommend I talk to for more information? Or is there someone else on your team who also uses these particular skill sets I'm looking to use on the job? If you ask at least one informational, one advice, one referral question minimum, depending on the time frame that you have, you are going to get the most out of it. And so that can be so important. And again, at the end, you can always ask if they'd be willing to meet sometime again in the future. Remember that this should be mutually beneficial, and it will be, even if not right in that moment. You might be their future contact in this area, that you're now part of their network and their mind map, right? You never know who they might be interested in learning more about. You can always share articles with them in the future, but also you can ask them if there's some way, or tell them if there's some way that I can be helpful in the future, please let me know. You'll be able to share your knowledge, skill set, connections far down the line. I used to work with someone 20 years and we've stayed in touch. And over time, she became a recruiter for a big biotech company. She never knew that after doing meetings with me, then she'd be on the other side and answering my questions as we went forward. Thank you for people who are giving fantastic tips in the chat on reaching out and following up. And I'm going to include a lot more in the handout that will go out after this. So when it comes, and sorry, I've got a little trigger finger on the mouse right now. Then when it comes to follow up, because I know that was something that everyone really wanted addressed, following up and staying in touch are so important when it comes to the networking. There's so many ways also to track who you've met with. Some people do it in a spreadsheet, others have notebooks. I use LinkedIn as my memory bank and networking reminder. I'm not so great with names except for first letters, so it helps me to look people up later. It really depends on what works for you. But when it comes to following up, certainly send thank you messages, whether no matter which platform you're using to do it, depending on how you connect. Thank them for their time, thank them for sharing, and potentially, right, mention as something that they suggested that you do that you have done. But you might also follow up with that later on as well. And also send thank you notes to the person who introduced you to this person, if there is such a person. You want to make sure to keep that long network going. Certainly, you could connect to people and follow up via social media. Um, you could Oops, I'm actually linked to a Harvard staff member on Duolingo. So I think of her every day because we're in a long-standing Duolingo, you know, I forget, suddenly I'm blanking on what you call it, but a streak. I think we're up to 30 days connected. That makes me think about my networking contact every day. You never know how you can follow up and stay in touch. And she brought it up, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. You can again be generous. I really wanted to double down on that. Think about ways that you can help them. Maybe there's a particular candidate, as someone mentioned earlier, that would be helpful to this person in their role that they're looking to fill. Or maybe they really need to find a connection later on and a particular, you know that they're working on a particular project, and you might suggest to them someone that you've heard of. Or maybe you found an article on a topic they're interested in. There's so many ways that you can help out. I like to also schedule reminders for myself to reconnect. If there's someone who I really particularly want to reconnect with, I will put it on my calendar private, just make it as a task to make sure that I can reach out. And that can be so helpful. Certainly, offer referrals to others can be part of what you do to connect to others. But also, as I mentioned earlier, you might include it in the thank you note, but do let them know when you've read something that they suggested or when you've met with someone who they recommended to you. Then, after you meet with that person, you'll be following up with the first contact again to thank them. It's a fantastic way to sort of build that connection, but you can keep it easy. And you can also, when you're thinking about them, if something sparks your memory, you can say, I was just thinking about your advice from the last time that we talked about this particular topic. I really appreciate it again, and let them know how it's impacted you. You're now both part of each other's worlds and a part of that sort of map of the network that's ongoing, and you can stay connected in some of these ways. So again, if you have your favorite ways to track or stay in touch with people, please put them into the chat. Can be so helpful. Ah, also, I forgot I had a note on this. Congratulate people on promotions. LinkedIn makes it very easy to do so, but you might also hear about a new job in your department staff meeting. Someone's moved on someplace. Congratulate them, write to them. Maybe you heard that someone who left your job a while ago moved on. What a great way to reconnect. And I just want to mention in terms of the tracking and staying in touch, someone mentioned they used OneNote to reach out to people who had multiple roles over the years in the same department when they were in their job search. And that's another great tool to use. I personally love OneNote for being able to search and make up for my poor memory. And what a great use of it. That is a fantastic option. So we're toward the end of our session right now, but I'll be taking some of the questions if there are any. But it looks like a lot of people have been answering the questions in the chat, which I so appreciate, including some people who I meet with regularly in order to catch up and also learn what's going on in their departments. They know who they are. So think about what your next steps will be based on everything that we've talked about today. Hopefully, there's a few things on your list, on that paper, on that document that you've pulled up that you might already have written down. First of all, maybe you're going to map out the rest of your current network and look for those holes. Maybe you're going to set some time aside to get them done and block 15 minutes maybe as a quick way to just get started and then expanding that block of time. Maybe you're going to pick 2 5-minute networking actions from your list. In fact, I challenge you to do so. Um, if you've written down a few 5-minute networking actions, maybe you can just get those done today. It would be great if you could reach out to 3 people this week. Maybe you already have just from people who are in the chat. And if you want to commit to doing anything else, certainly add it to your chat. I am really happy to be part of all of your network now, and if I haven't been already, and I really am looking forward to staying connected over time. So do reach out to me on LinkedIn. Make sure you hit connect, not follow, and I hope that we can talk more about some of your questions as we're going forward. I'm actually looking through questions right now, and I would recommend that many people, everyone here who has any questions about reaching out, look through the chat because there's experts giving some fantastic advice. Um, for example, one person had said, oh, actually, sorry. This is just as remember that the meetings that you're having from Eleanor Storch, who's an expert in talent and HR, remember that the meetings that you have are often a two-way street. And so it's important to prepare, and accountability is key. But the person you meet with typically wants the connection to be successful too. Exactly. So it's a fantastic way just to maybe calm some of those nerves and help you move forward because they are also excited about connecting or interested in seeing what comes out of it. Keeping that note really brief and even offering if you have a chat to talk time to talk online or in person, what works better for you, maybe some potential days can make it much easier to send those networking requests. But I am going to send you some samples later. And really, people are saying that they stay more authentic and true to their way of doing things, and they can make that work much better for their long-term career success. And I 100% agree. Finally, let me see if I have any other questions. Oh, okay. We answered the one about the informational interview message, I hope, just then. Briefly let them know why you're reaching out. Um, and who you are, right? Why is it that you're interested in talking about this particular topic now? Ask for that meeting, a short meeting perhaps, maybe virtually or online, depending on what works for them. And perhaps suggest a general time frame or ask what works best for them. You also might ask if they're quite senior, is there someone else that you'd recommend I talk to? I understand how busy you are. Or for anyone, that can be a nice alternative. But I am going to be sending you some information on that as well. And finally, someone said, can you give any advice on finding a mentor? And I noticed that people are giving their suggestions already. Someone recommended the Harvard Internal Professionals Pathways program. That's wonderful. I know there's the FAS Staff Mentoring Program, and there are so many more out there, but I think they're a little hidden. So if you know of others, certainly make sure that you get those connections in there right now. I think I would agree with all of the commenters who gave advice to others, and I hope that you've gotten something out of today's session, and I hope that you will reach out to other people moving forward and continue to build your networking map and sustain that map over time at Harvard and beyond. So thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you so much, Amanda. This was fantastic. Um, a very lively chat and a lot of great advice from folks from across the university. So I know you said that you're going to send out or will send out on your behalf kind of a follow-up of resources and additional information folks can check out. So we'll make sure that everybody who was in attendance today gets that. And I see that note, Claudia, about sharing the chat, and we'll pull some of the more relevant questions and make sure those are included. So I'm Hester Breen, and just to close things out, I'm the co-chair of the CCW alongside the wonderful and talented Ashley, and we're so grateful that you could attend today. If for some reason you found out about this session kind of like from a random link that was forwarded to you, I hope that you will scan this QR code and sign up for our newsletter. We send out a monthly newsletter letting folks know about both the CCW events and also broader employee resource group events, as well as what's going on across the Harvard ecosystem. So it's a really great place to stay engaged, and it's links galore. So sometimes you got to open it and then click through all the links at, the start of your day or the end of your day, and then just make your way through them as you can. But it's really a fantastic way, I think, to kind of engage and introduce yourself to new avenues throughout the university. So that's it. We're going to give you all 10 minutes before your 1 o'clock meeting. A joy and a privilege to see you all today. And thank you again, Amanda. We're so grateful that you had the time and made the space to come and share with us. So yeah, we absolutely can change the world with 10 minutes. I'm at the very least going to refill my water bottle and go look at the sky. So
Perfect. And hopefully
I
people can do a 5-minute networking outreach
exactly, yeah,
perhaps in that time.
and still have 5 minutes. So
So thank you so much, Hester and Ashley. Really appreciate your organizing this, and to all the people who shared fantastic suggestions in the chat. Thanks.
thanks so much, everybody.